I know we're running behind schedule and I very much would like to stay within time. Now, for people who are really interested in culture, as you already know, in India, last year was our largest survey. We represented close to 45 lakh employee voices, about 4.5 million employee voices got surveyed. We work with about 1,800 organizations. We enjoy the world's largest market share in workplace certifications, and it's the same story here in India as well. Has a QR code. It's nothing but a for all app. So how do 45 lakh voices of India come together? What do they want from a workplace culture? What are their expectations from an employer? All of that is available on this QR code. So I suggest you click it, download it, because 15-20 minutes I don't think would do justice to the kind of topic that I have on hand. Now, as far as India is concerned, a few interesting statistics. We've been speaking about it. I think yesterday was a really great panel of speakers, but I just would like to summarize and provide context as to why is our country, India, really positioned, you know, very uniquely on the world stage. A couple of parameters. One, we of course know we're one of the world's fastest growing economies, and today FDI inflows into the country is about 70.97 billion, huge. So I'm given to understand that in Kerala, coconuts are very common, right? So for those startups out here, do not for 1 second believe that there's scarcity of capital. Actually, we're overflowing capital, and if I were to give an analogy, capital is available like a sack of coconuts, if you would like to call that. So it's really not the issue of access to capital, but I think the issue is of sustainable, great ideas. And once you have an idea, do you have a team that kind of backs it up? I'm not going to go through all of these parameters, but you know, just to summarize, if you have a startup or you're already running a business and you're not growing at a minimum 10% year on year, then you're actually degrowing, because the economy itself is growing by 7%, right? So high growth economy, you have all the indicators going for you. Of course, with the youngest, largest youth population in the world, so a lot of solutions that's coming up is catered towards this demographic, and we're seeing a lot of successful startups emerge in this place. Of course, the growing infrastructure story, we're pumping in billions of dollars, and just with one road, it has a multiplier effect on jobs and on the economy, because there are shops that come by side, there are hotels that come by side, there are tourists that's coming. So infrastructure does have a multiplier effect on the economy, and we're seeing that as well. So given this kind of a context, a little more dive, if you want a deep dive into India, this is very interesting, right? So even if you're going to look, a lot of us say that we're a population of about 1.4 billion, but what does that actually mean? And what does that actually mean to some of the ideas that we really want to innovate on? And if you just look at a slice deeper, you will see that out of the 144, we have about 136 crore Aadhaar card holders, which means there is high amount of data that is available, which we can then solution on. Very, very interesting data. In fact, if you look at it, the e-commerce is just a mere 80 crores. So even if you're going to talk about penetration, I don't think India is a market that is heavily penetrated. We still are in a market that is under-penetrated, and still a lot of scope for high growth industries. Similar is the case with stock market users, health insurance, digital learning. We had one question coming up on digital learning. All these are high growth sectors, and keep this data in mind. I would strongly urge for all of you to keep this in mind. Now, why does this all come together is because as I stand before you, my 23, 24 years of experience that I've had largely has been into three buckets. One as an HR head, where it was a large conglomerate, employee size, 10,000 and above, SEZs, five-star hotels, and I really saw how workplace culture came together. I mean, you can have an idea and you can have a business. What is the business without its people, right? So, a lot of first-hand experience from a point of view of an HR head. My second hat that I wore in this was that of an investor. So, I put together an angel investing fund. I was managing 46 portfolio companies that we had invested into. This was way back in that time, about 10, 15 years ago. Again, in the startup world, we did angel investments up to Series B, had a few successful exits. But again, culture was center because, this is the question that I get asked a lot. Saying if you have an A idea and a B team, the idea is fantastic, but the team is okay, average, fair enough. But then if you have a fantastic team, an A team, but the idea is not really there, which one would you back up? Right? And most often than not, we've seen that the ideas that get backed up because of a commercial interest, that hey, this is a new idea, certainly fail. And the startups where you're backing up the team, they succeed. In the startup world, as you know, more than 95% of the startups fail. And guess the number one reason for that? It is conflict between the founders. Money changes people, right? And the most common mistake that we've seen is as soon as somebody gets funded, there is a lavish office that is set up, there is a big car that is being bought, and there is a secretary that is hired to manage my schedule. These are typically behaviors that we see operating, right? So I think the dialogue certainly has to move, but what's interesting in that also is the role of culture. We've seen a lot of very promising startups disappear, not fail, disappear, simply because of culture incompatibility, right? And third, as a serial entrepreneur, through my businesses, I have created about 1,000 jobs, and through some of the foundations that we support, disadvantaged women, army veterans, etc., we've created, we've mentored and built a community of 4,000 entrepreneurs that have gone ahead to create about 12,000 jobs for the country. And if I look at that experience of my entrepreneurship, again, culture is center stage. And what is culture? Culture is a set of unique behaviors that is you. That is you. And the moment you start the culture journey by saying, let's copy, let's also be a me too, I think most often than not, you will fail. So that is the collective experience that I'm bringing to this audience, and I'll share a few of the work that we do in Great Place to Work. And this is some interesting data. Today's workforce, as you know, more than 70% of today's workforce are millennials. And if you add Gen Z into it, it becomes as high as 90%. Right? Now just imagine today's workforce where a lot of the organizations are actually having 5 generations in one organization. So you have a Gen X, typically people who were born in the 1960s, 70s, today in high leadership positions. And their emails is very British, is very Victorian, right? Dear so-and-so, and they end with warm regards. And then you cut to Gen Z. Guess what? You guys don't even write. They're just emojis. Want to catch up? 1 thumbs up. That's it. I mean, there's no communication. It's all emojis. And then you go to Gen Alpha, which is the generation that's going to come into the workforce, give or take a few years. Their language is something that even I don't understand. Like, I was addressing, this group of senior school-going kids, and there was this comment to say, it's all cap. And I didn't understand what that meant. I said, what do you mean by it's all cap? So then they had this horrified look as if I'm some grandmother from Mars. And they said, it just means that we're going to have an honest conversation. I was like, yeah, no cap, or whatever that they said, right? So this generation of Alpha is not only coming in with emojis and the issues and the challenges of the digital world where face-to-face relationships is unfortunately the victim, but they're also coming up with a completely new vocabulary. So today, if you have a town hall or if you have a strategy meeting and you have a workforce which is intergenerational, you have a market in India where majority of the population is the youth. Where do you think the solutions are coming from? Gen X. Who are the solutions for? Gen Alpha. And then we talk about why businesses fail and we have Excel sheets and math and everything. So I think business largely, my friends, is common sense. It's just common sense, right? What makes the difference is execution. Nothing that beats execution. A fair amount of discipline, a lot of sacrifice, and believe me, as a CEO or the founder, you're the least important person in the team. And the moment you have that kind of a mindset and you promote that kind of a culture, you're bound to succeed. Please don't tell me that all businesses in the world are unique. There are a lot of Me Too. Apple and Microsoft are classic examples. In fact, there are a lot of strategy conversations that we have to say, never be the first player in the market. Be the second player in the market or the third player in the market. Because the cost of errors and mistakes is being borne by somebody else. And you learn from that and then you make a better organization. So really what I'm trying to say is, even in the narrative of culture, even in the narrative of startups, there is no copybook. You have to passionately be original and you have to be okay to fail. And please fail fast. The ego comes in, and I have seen that a lot, where we are in denial to say this is not working. So some of that clinical aspects is really required. But coming back to the workforce and what is it that we do, just to give you context and why some of these startup stories that we're coming up are so interesting, is simply because we are the global authority. We work with about 18,000 organizations globally. We capture voices of more than 20 million employees. About 4.5 million of them come from India, and we operate in about 170 countries annually. So that's our footprint. So if you remember the first slide that I shared, that's where all the research and insight sits. So if you really want to deep dive and understand what is the voice of the workforce today in India, that app is really going to help. This is the center of what we do, which is trust, which is absolutely critical, not only for startups, but for any type of the company. So what we do in our organization is to measure trust. And we've seen a lot of startups, there are concepts about patient capital, but also ethics. Ethics in the startup world has to be a binary equation. It has to be a binary equation. Now, just because it's company's money and I'm scraping away some of it, or I claim higher reimbursements, if you don't nip that in the bud, we more often than not see those companies really fail. So in the startup world, the fulcrum becomes trust, and trust with the people that you work for, the customers trusting your promise to deliver value, and your employees actually having pride in the work that they do, right? And of course, a sense of belonging. Now, today's work environment and today's startups, there's something very interesting that did not happen before the pandemic, and that is the hybrid work culture, right? Pandemic, all of us went virtual, and today it's a kind of a hybrid. You have access to market anyway across the globe thanks to technology, but hybrid also comes with its challenges. If you're always virtual and you're really not able to build those physical relationships, those face-to-face relationships, again we see momentum of those startups really tapering away. It's very sexy to say it's virtual, we did not meet in person, but believe me, the conversations that matter, you have to turn up, right? So you know, technology has its advantages, but my only advice to all of you is don't use that as an excuse to become lazy. You have to hustle, you have to make those connections, and you have to make your business work. Great starts with leadership. Leaders, and you are the founders of your startup. You shape experience, experience shapes culture, and culture drives performance. That's pretty much the mandate that we operate on. I'm not going to dwell too much into it. The organizers have a copy of this, but look, our journey in Great Place to Work is more than 30 years globally. We've done massive amount of research into what works, into building a high trust, high performance organization, and these are pretty much the pillars. So if you really want a boundary parameter of creating a high trust, high performance startup or an organization, these could be some very strong foundational blocks for you. To summarize the startup culture, 4 things, 2 P's and 2 A's as I call it. One is passion. Passion is just not excitement. It's not that you get up tomorrow and you feel this is the new great idea that's going to change the world. Passion comes from failure. The other word for passion is tenacity. Do you have the ability to get up, go back the next day and win? That is passion, and that is the foundation block. And if you have passionate founders, the ripple effect that it has on your extended team is fantastic, right? Second is the personality. You know, they talk about that for children. Children don't do what you say, children do what they see. And same thing happens if you're a leader of a corporate world. Your personality. You talk about coming on time to office, you talk about ethics. We've had cases where the founders say gift policy, we're not going to accept gifts for more than 5,000 rupees. And then suddenly somebody gets a gift and everybody goes gaga and the policy is left aside. So the personality, are you consciously becoming a role model for your employees and thereby for your customers to believe in you? Agility. Agility is, you know, do you have the will to accept failure, change course, take corrective actions and do that fast? Is your culture agile? Means these are the questions you should be asking. And the last one is authenticity. And a lot of them ask me to say, Yash, you know, as CEOs you have to sound right all the time. So what according to you is an authentic leader? And this is not my formula, but a gentleman called Hubert Joly, you know, you can Google him. And I really loved the way he describes authentic leadership. He says, authentic leadership is practiced by this formula. It's honesty. Of course, that's the core, right? Honesty minus self-righteousness. Because self-righteousness can make your story go wrong very quickly. Honesty minus self-righteousness plus vulnerability. that, if you practice every single day, you become an authentic leader. And that inspires a lot of people. So with that, I have the 00 staring at me, and I'm not in the habit of exceeding time. So thank you so very much for having me over. I wish you all the best in your startup journey, in your growth journeys, or those people who are still on the fence, whether to become entrepreneurs or not. Do what I did. I started my company, my first company, about 14, 15 years ago, not because I had a vision to change the world, but I thought if I failed, I can get back to a job. It was just an experiment, right? So take that risk, take that leap of faith, believe in yourself, and all the very best, and have a wonderful evening and the rest of the conference. Thank you.